start with one that came in earlier in the week that I promised that we would address. My daughter's 10 and has had anxiety since she was little. She's on medication, but what else can I do? I try to reassure her, but I encourage her to tell me how she feels. She has a hard time with that. She's so smart, and this anxiety, I believe, is masking her true potential. Help. Now, I did write this person back, and I asked a host of questions. I don't know if there were questions that you would have asked.
That's great.
But I asked things like, did the symptoms start suddenly? Has this been going on for a while? Is there anything in particular? So she did give us a little bit more information. She said she's never had a strep infection, to her knowledge. She's been trying to reassure her or divert attention and praise her for a good job well done. Her anxiety was worse when she was 4 or 5. Medication has helped, but she's now prepubescent and it's starting again. She has that initial anxiety, but once she knows what's happening, she's fine. She does not take anything but a multivitamin along with her other meds for ADD, and recently was put on risperidol. And she said, thank you so much, that you're wonderful.
Thank you. So I would have a bunch of other questions.
Okay, let's ask away, because she knows we're going to be answering it today.
Okay. Well, first of all, there's a lot you can do for anxiety. Anxiety has come up on our show a few times, hasn't it, Shannon? And I have given a few lectures on anxiety. I think maybe one time we should do a lecture just on anxiety, because it manifests in a lot of different ways. Now, I don't know. I'm really lost in terms of trying to, when parents write in, I try to understand who their child is.
Yes.
And I'm pretty lost on this particular one, because usually we recognize anxiety, or parents tend to recognize that some things are anxiety when the child is pretty high functioning, because I think all children, including the children who are very affected by autism, still have anxiety, and that shows up in self-stimulatory types of behaviors or obsessive compulsive behaviors. But something gave me the impression that this child is very high functioning, but then at the same time I suddenly heard that the child's on risperidol as well, so I'm not sure now. The main question I would have is, what symptoms do you see that you're considering to be anxiety, and when do they occur, right? So I would need to know when these behaviors are occurring. So on the one end of the spectrum, I guess anxiety is like the ritualistic type of stuff that our kids do. This what's also called self-stimulatory behavior, or stereotypy, because a lot of that is usually just very similar to obsessive compulsive behavior. So an obsessive compulsive behavior is a form of anxiety. OCD, obsessive compulsive disorder, is one of the 6 anxiety disorders. So we obsess about things in our heads, and then we do compulsions, and those compulsions are pretty similar to self-stimulatory behavior. So on the other hand, high-level kids exhibit anxiety with just things like having various things that they always want to have with them. If you think about it, anxiety manifests pretty similarly in us. So let's say with yourself, I would tell this parent, look at yourself and what situations cause you anxiety. So some situations for most people would be, let's say, public speaking, that causes anxiety, or a new situation that causes anxiety, or going to a foreign country. I use that example because I think our kids feel like they're in a foreign country all the time, because they don't really understand the language, they don't understand a lot of what's going on around them. Often if you're not sleeping, you will have more anxiety. The number one thing I would tell this parent is ADHD medications tend to make you feel anxious. So that's really important to know. ADHD medications are speed, they're amphetamines. And amphetamines will give you heart palpitations, or they will just increase your pulse, your heart rate, and so on. And that is a very similar to feeling to anxiety, and it actually might make you feel anxious. Pain will make you anxious. So let's say if you go to have some sort of food and it disturbs your stomach, and then you have gastrointestinal problems, you're going to feel anxious. So I don't know if your child is experiencing any kind of GI problems, has anxiety perhaps. A lot of our kids who have diarrhea 10 times a day, obviously they're going to be experiencing anxiety when you have that much activity in your stomach and your gut.
She does report here that it centers around going places, that it's when she has to go someplace. And she says that it's initial anxiety and that once she knows what's happening,
she gets better.
Then she gets better.
So let's say that it is similar to what an agoraphobic would experience, so going out of the comfort zone, essentially. So, and if you really want to rename anxiety and simplify it, it's fear, right? I mean, anxiety is a form of phobia, so sort of similar to phobias. The treatment for anxiety is basically good that she's on medication. I'm assuming she's on an SSRI, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitor. The best treatment is a combination of medication, such as SSRI, and cognitive behavioral therapy. The therapy to do with it is desensitization, which we've done before. We've talked about before here. So you would now list the 20 things, let's say, from the lowest anxiety provoking to the highest anxiety provoking. So the lowest might be hearing about going out or seeing a picture of a place that makes her anxious, and the highest would be actually going out and going to that place. And you list the 10 steps or 20 steps in between the lowest and highest, and then you pair those. And then you teach the child some sort of contrary activity or relaxing activity. We do really like meditation activities, breathing, relaxation. With deep breathing, it slows you down, so that helps. And then once the individual, it could be anything though, it could be like thinking of a funny scene, it could be listening to music, it could be using a massage toy that calms you down, it could be holding some object that calms you down. But basically you have to, so phase one is you make the hierarchy, phase two is you have to make sure that your child can engage in some sort of calming activity, soothing activity, and then you pair the two. And so then you basically start with the lowest on the hierarchy, which is like, let's say, talking about going out, and you have the child do that calming activity, so let's say listening to music, and then they can handle that without anxiety. And then you do it with step 2 and step 3 and step 4 until you get to the top, which is the hardest one. So it's basically a classical conditioning model of pairing something that's calming with the anxiety-provoking stimulus, but in a graduated format. And that works really, really well.
Can I ask you, can an ABA therapist do cognitive behavior techniques with? This
is a very pure behavioral technique. Okay. So any BCBA or any behaviorist should know how to do systematic desensitization. It's a very well-known technique. I'm sure if you Google it, it'll go into detail the stuff that I just said. So a behaviorist can help you with that. Okay. Depending on the level of your child, if the child is able to comprehend more language, then you would want to sit down and reason out what's going on and identify what's leading to the anxiety. Like, why are you afraid of being in public places or going out? And that's really it. But the key to it is that you don't allow the child to avoid the anxiety-provoking stimulus, because if you do, it actually gets worse. Yeah. Like, in our minds, we tend to obsess about things and make them much more. I went through this with one of my kids when they were younger, and who had a lot of anxiety over different things. Actually, kids always have anxiety. Do we know the age of this child?
She said 10.
10, yeah. So you tend to have a lot of different anxiety. We all do, Shannon, and the lecture that I do on anxiety talks about how we all actually have coping mechanisms. Yeah. Some of them are good and some of them are not good. So, for instance, people the ones that are good might do things like meditation or, activities, running, etc. The ones that are not good are things like maybe we overeat. Yes. We go shopping.
I'm familiar with that one.
Well, there's a lot of stuff like that that people do.
Yeah.
And you always have to remember anxiety and depression are pretty much the same thing. One is outward and one is inward. And anxiety, if it's at a high level for a long time, will lead to what's called hopelessness or depression.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to make sure that you do these techniques and just get over it.
And she had also written in that I don't know where they are, but that cognitive behavioral therapy is difficult. There isn't anybody there, but she does get ABA at school.
Oh, that's terrific. Yeah, so some behaviorists would easily be able to tell you how to do systematic desensitization.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. And if you have more questions about that, you can write in and give us more information with some of the different things that Dr. Granpeesheh asked. Okay, we had another family that wrote in extensively about who would they need to take a 15-year-old to get a diagnosis. They've already spent a great deal of money. They are in an area where there are a lot of different services, but they're trying to figure out who the definitive person is to go and get a 15-year-old diagnosed.
Where are they?
They're in the Chicago area.
Gosh. If you were here, I'd tell you to come see me. Mm-hmm. You need to find someone who has, so you're looking at either a psychiatrist, psychologist, neurologist, but with autism background and history. And this is a tough time because, this year in May, the diagnostic criteria changed completely. Yeah. So you really have to find someone who is in this field, in the world of autism. Otherwise, they won't even know the symptoms.
And they report that they feel like it's been overshadowed by the fact that there's a seizure disorder, and that's why they haven't been able in the past to get the autism diagnosis. So does that further complicate it?
Yeah, it does, because a lot of if you see a neurologist, for instance, they will tell you that seizures or frequent seizures may lead to some of these sort of delays that we see or problem areas that we see within autism. But again, if you see someone who's current and whose job it is to know the diagnostic criteria now, it's a really great time for you to get diagnosed, because on the DSM-5, the new diagnostic criteria, you actually have a modifier that says with seizures. So you can have the diagnosis of ASD with seizures, and that would be important to do. I guess the number one name that comes to mind, and Margaret Bowman. Mm-hmm. Margaret Bowman is in the Boston area. She does also come to the Los Angeles area every few months. Mm-hmm. But that's who I would get in touch with. I guess if you need to have a definitive answer, you either go to Boston and see Margaret, or come here and see me.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll leave that one and see if you have more information about that you'd like. You can write to us.
And I would look at the universities there. I mean, Northwestern is there, and you should look at the university and see if they have an autism program, because I'm sure there's a lot of people who this is all they do.
Yeah, there's a great deal of frustration, and the person wrote in several times, I'm just so confused. I feel like we've tried so many things, and they've spent a great deal of money, and still haven't been able to get it done.
Well, but I guess what I would ask is, what are they looking for? Like, what will it do for you to know the label?
Yeah.
That's often what I ask people, because so what, like, let's say you get the label or you don't get the label. The main thing I think that you're looking for is what's the treatment, and that doesn't necessarily have to do with the label. It has to do with the individual symptoms. So regardless of what the label is, perhaps it would help you if you filled out skills. Go online, get on our assessment, Skills Index, and on our website, which is skillsforautism.com, and answer all those questions for your child, and it'll help you identify all the problem areas, I guess, or deficits, and then treat those, teach those, figure out ways to help your child just learn the things they need to learn, regardless of what we call it.
So get into the solution instead of focusing on getting the diagnosis. And
that's the thing. A lot of times we think that we need to know the diagnosis in order to go forward, right? And the truth is, with a diagnosis that changes as often as autism has, it's a series of symptoms. It's like, yes, there's social delay of some type, which is usually connected restricted to language delay, and then there's some aberrant behaviors. Yeah, it's that subjective, you know, and you put it all together. Hey, if you have enough of the symptoms, it's called autism. You know, I always tell people this, you know, I always say, like, it doesn't mean all that much. You could also just say, oh, my child has some language deficits, some social deficits, and some behaviors, and treat the individual issues.
Yeah.
Right? If there's language delays, your child needs to learn language, and if they can't learn language, they need to have a communication device. And once you do all that, most of the behaviors tend to go away, and then social behavior develops, and so on.
Okay, great advice. So we're going to take a break, and we're going to come back. In fact, we have a question about skills that came in this morning on the live feature. So we'll be back after these messages. Stick with us. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We have with us Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, and she is a true visionary in the field of autism.
Thank you so much.
It is such a delight to have her here and have her accessible to you to answer your questions. So a lot of you have been writing in. We're going to get to as many of these as we can. This next one for Dr. Doreen. I have recently signed up for skills and really want to get to the treatment part. I've not yet finished all of the assessment questions. My only question is where to begin. Should I begin with goals from speech OT IEP reports? I consider myself educated in ABA and have taken some IBT courses for things I wasn't sure about. I've read a ton of books and have watched almost all the previous Autism Live episodes. We bless you. I feel like I'm losing valuable time because I really want to do all the assessment questions first and then treat, but I noticed that more questions were added as my child aged, going from 5 years and 2 months to 5 years and 3 months, which is awesome. Where do you think I should begin? It's the $64,000 question.
Yeah, right. And you know, ahead of time, I always apologize to parents because, on the one hand, some parents appreciate the fact that we're so obsessive ourselves that we give you 10,000 questions. But on the other hand, I know it's annoying, believe me. I do. I mean, I've tried, and this is intelligence software. Like, we went back and shortened this thing a million times. It was at a point where it would take something like 21 hours or something to fill it out. It's crazy. So you don't have to fill the whole thing out. You can start right now, because generally you answer questions in order of age. So the questions that you'll get, well, you're going actually across the thing, but there are certain questions that are presented to you across each domain, and I don't know how you've completed. Maybe you've completed a couple of domains and you still have a few other domains left. I don't know, but if you go through a whole domain, any whole domain, let's say language, you'll be getting a lot of questions, but the system will order them in terms of age, and so you will have already the youngest ones available. You know, the system tells you to do the ones that are youngest first. So what I would suggest you do is, if you are short on time, this is what I would do. I would do the language. How old is the child?
They don't say. Oh, no, they do 5 years
right.
old.
So I would do language and play and social probably first. And those are very long. And then I would pick from those programs. So once you finish the assessment, obviously it produces for you. You go to the section that says, you know, pick programs or whatever, and then you have a whole ton of lessons. And depending on how many hours, this is some of the changes that I'm making to skills right now, is, let's say if you're actually doing 40 hours a week, then feel free to pick a total of about 20 programs from all of the sort of the supermarket available for you, and pick the first few, right, that the system tells you. But if you have 20 hours, then maybe you want to pick, let's say, 10 to 15 programs, and see, you essentially want to make sure that your child's schedule is pretty packed with these lessons, and that you're doing a little bit of repetition but not a lot. So in the same session, let's say you have a 2-hour session, you want to be able to give the child all different types of activities. You don't want to do repeated the same activity multiple times, because it will repeat over the course of the week. So And that's it. So you can start right now with the lessons, and if you need some assistance, just call us. Call here and ask for. You can call and talk to the skills department, or you can just go on our 800 number, and we will literally give you 1 or 2 hours of a supervisor, whatever you need, on the phone to kind of guide you through the system and tell you how to use things. You can also email Adele Nadowski, who was one of the people who helped create Skills. Dr. Nadowski's email is, here we go, NAJDOWSKI. And you will at centerforautism.com. So
and she's here every Friday.
Oh, great!
And she answers a live skills question every Friday when she's here. So you can also ask her questions then when she's here on Fridays in the first hour.
Right,
she's always here,
and she will be able to help you, guide you as well, or just call the skills hotline, or you can call CARD. And we can easily give you a couple of hours of a supervisor who will guide you through the system, but you don't have to wait. You can start right now. And depending on the level of your child, you're going to be starting with earlier skills, and I would focus right now on those 3. I find the most important curricula, I think, and having written pretty much all of it or most of it, is that I think language and social are the 2 key curriculum areas for younger children. As you get older, we're looking at the cognition and EF curriculum.
And I would just like to throw in 2 cents as a parent that I know when I first started Skills and I would look at the lesson and I would go, I don't know which one.
It's overwhelming.
I don't know which one. And, there are 5 different criteria that help you to pick, and that's all very well and good. But I was afraid to jump in because I thought, what if I jump in at the wrong point? But the thing that I discovered was if you jump in at the wrong point, it becomes infinitely clear to you within 7 seconds.
Yeah.
You see, oh my goodness, they already know this, I can move on to the next lesson. Or you see, okay, I don't have enough things, I got to go back, and I can't skip that lesson that I thought I could skip.
Right.
And if you just jump in, it becomes clear.
Right. And if you answered questions, if you weren't sure about questions, what I always say is, if you're not sure whether your child can do something, just be safe and say no. Yeah. And then that way it'll be included in your lesson plan. So, and I don't think, your child's 5, and I don't know where you live, where your concern is the IEP. The reason we wrote the IEP goals is just so that you can actually produce an IEP report and give it to your school and have people at school work on the same goals that you're working on, but don't let that be your guide. Your guide is your treatment plan, like where all the lessons are. That's your guide.
But the IEP goal thing is so luscious.
Yeah, and
it's
so we're working on a report right now where it'll just print reports for you as well. But I'm doing so much stuff right now on Skills, it's crazy. We're changing a lot of stuff. We're on version 2, 3, 4. We're working on, it's going to have a new skin altogether, and it's going to help pick lessons for you, so you don't even have to think.
There you go.
Yeah, it'll be very nice.
I'm very excited. But the IEP feature has helped me so much.
Great.
It has changed the IEP process for me.
Great.
And so I don't have to stress anymore, and that is amazing.
That's wonderful.
Okay, so next question here. How can I teach my son to stop his video games appropriately? I pre-teach before he plays. We've practiced putting the controls down when the timer beeps. He gets a countdown/warning starting at 10 minutes left, and he earns a token for stopping within 30 seconds of the timer going off, which will add more time to the video games after he earns 5. Love this parent. I'm stealing that. He usually asks for more time politely or to finish the level he is on, but this can take several more minutes. I thank him for asking nicely and sometimes honor his request, but it's usually a battle every night. He would rather argue with me and keep playing than earn a token. Please help.
The simplest thing is I think you can buy these on Amazon. They might even have them at Best Buy as well. It's sort of a little switch that just shuts the computer off at a certain time.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you're doing a lot of really good stuff, but I think he's learned that negotiating with you will give him some additional time, And also, maybe you're right, maybe he's actually enjoying the battle. The easiest thing is to switch it off. No conversation at all. When the buzzer goes, you just switch it off. That's it. And if you don't want to be the bad guy to do that, then there are these switches that shut the electricity off to a device.
That's brilliant. We have on the computer, on the parent controls, where it shuts off at a certain time.
There you go. And I'm pretty
but
sure.
I don't have it on the
iPad or
the Xbox. But you're right. I know that there are switches that will turn things off for like your sprinklers and things.
Well, I mean, yeah, exactly. And Which would be great. That's sort of like a timer or so on. But we even have, and you could actually put a timer on pretty much anything, you know. But we do have kids who are very advanced, you know, and they sometimes want, and the parents are like sometimes have to sleep earlier and can't watch over the child at 10 o'clock at night or something. And so in those cases, this helps as well. It's like where the whole household shuts down at 10, you know. So
love it.
It's entirely how you want it. It's up to you how you want to deal with it. But the easy answer is just shut the thing off and no conversation at all. He will get upset initially, but he'll get over it.
Yeah. Okay, great advice. We're going to take another break and come back with more of your questions for Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh after these messages. Welcome back to Autism Live and to Ask Dr. Doreen. We are here with Dr. Doreen Granpeesheh, who is an amazing brain to pick in the field of autism. She has had extensive experience, multiple decades, working with children on the autism spectrum. There is no one better that we could have in the chair that you could ask questions of from a wide variety of subjects having to do with autism. And you guys have been writing in. Our next question from a viewer: I have a very physically aggressive 6-year-old boy. He's getting ABA in the home. I have 3 younger children that he has hurt. How do I protect them when he is having an episode and I am home alone with all 4? I used to have a safe word that I used. They would run into the bathroom until he calmed down. Do you have any other suggestions for dealing with aggressive behavior? And thank you.
Oh my gosh, that is a tough situation. I don't think you should be using a safe word with the others. I don't think the others should be afraid of him. Like, should be taught that when you hear this word, run away and be afraid. I think that this is one of those situations where you honestly need to have an adult there all the time. You should never be left alone with 4 of them, one of them being aggressive. Never. And I don't know if you can make that happen, but you have to put everything you have into that, because it will be important for the other children's lives going forward. You need to have not just respite care, you need to have a behaviorist with you until this aggression comes under control. The aggression, it has to do with frustration. Aggression is always about frustration, and it's basically not understanding that, you know, the rules of society, not understanding that we can't have everything we want right away. And aggression is just a form of communication that says, I want to have this, or I want to avoid this now, immediately, and that's about it. And if there's other kids around, I'm gonna hit them, hurt them, whatever it is, because I might want their toys, or they might be too loud or bothering me, or whatever it is. But you know, a good behaviorist for 6 months could help you really get that under control. And I would really recommend that you do that. Does the parents say where they are? We don't know what sources of funding you have. But
they wrote in this morning, so if you're still watching, please write in and tell us what state you're in so we can help. I mean, I just got overwhelmed thinking about this story and hearing because I'm sure that you're watching and you're thinking, you know, that would be great. But
except I can't get help. I know. And like the majority of our families say, it's so hard, I can't get help anywhere.
But I think sometimes it takes somebody like you saying, this has to be the thing that happens, for us to think outside the box and think, how could I do this? Is there a family member that, you know, could help me out? Can I go back to my ABA provider? Can I say, look, this is serious for my entire family. Is there a way we can make this work?
Right. Can you afford to hire someone, anyone out of high school, you know, just as with a high school education? Can you afford to hire them at minimum wage and put them through IBT training so that they know exactly how to. We have training online, Institute for Behavioral Training, which will help them deal with challenging behaviors. You should not be alone with 4 children, one of whom is aggressive. It's a failure. It's a setup for failure. And if you're in California, I promise you would get funding. In a lot of other states, you would get funding. This is a pretty dangerous type of situation, and there are sources of funding for this type of thing. So I really, really urge you to try to do something. Get, like as Shannon said, maybe a family member and then put them through training. That's really what you have to do.
And so feel free to write us back and let us know where you are, and if there's the way that we can help you to figure out where your funding source may be available where you are. I'm sure you're overwhelmed, but I want you to hear what Dr. Granpeesheh said, that it would change if you were able to put this thing in place, and I'm sure that feels huge. Right. But imagine 6 months from now not having to live with this pit of fear in your stomach versus this continuing until something really tragic happens.
Yeah, and just think about, I'm sure, I don't have to tell you, I know that this parent is going through a lot.
Yeah.
Through a lot.
I'm feeling for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm just concerned for the kids, for the other kids, because I would not want them to be taught to run away. That's horrible.
Okay. Hard advice to hear, but essential. I'm so glad that you spoke it.
Yeah.
Because that is hard to hear. Okay, moving on to some very topical things. We have a couple of questions about dealing with Halloween.
Oh, okay.
Because it's looming large. Mm-hmm. So we have one person who wants to know, how do you work on getting a child to trick or treat? Another who says, my child is newly afraid of everything. Any suggestions for Halloween?
Yeah, so, the question about how to trick or treat is a little hard because I don't know anything about the child, and the level of functioning of your child will help determine how you handle that. Mm-hmm. But just assume that if your child's functioning like a little, 2-year-old, or your child's functioning like a 5-year-old, you do what we do with our typically developing kids. When they first go trick-or-treating, they have no clue what's going on. They don't know what's going on, and, I used to sing going down the street so my kids wouldn't get scared. Uh-huh. So I can't really respond to that question very well because I'm not sure what the issues are, and I'm not sure what level of functioning the child is. But for the other child, I think the issue was that they're afraid of things.
Newly afraid of everything.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we talked about, which is for fears, we do systematic desensitization. So it's great that you have, a week left? Or
yes, you got a whole week.
A whole week, and during this week, what I would do is I would immediately produce that hierarchy that I talked about, from the most fear-provoking to the least, focused on a subject that has to do with Halloween, obviously. And then I would start to maybe do some sort of fun activity, like maybe playing music and dancing, or singing or whatever, and pair the two so that your child realizes that this is just make-believe and it's pretend. And, it's tough. These days our kids are exposed to a lot more than we were at their age. I know I try to keep my kids away from even watching things that are but you can't anymore. There's, series out there on TV that are all with zombies and bodies being cut up and stuff.
It's in commercials.
And my kids have seen things that still freak me out to this point, so I don't know. I would say it's hard to prevent that sort of thing, so it's more that you have to kind of maybe have your child draw stuff or draw things and say, see, it's not for real, it's a drawing. But really, the answer is systematic desensitization. You have to do that sort of set of treatments and help your child overcome fear. Fear is a big factor. It plays a big role in a lot of things we do.
And Halloween has gotten really, really dark.
Yeah.
Really dark.
Yeah, I know. It's like, even I know the other day, my kids. So the other day I was out with my 18-year-old daughter, and we were buying some decorations for the house, and she's like such an angel, and she was like, "Oh, let's get the cute pumpkin and the this and that," and I was like, "Yeah, I think your brother actually wants some gore." And it's funny though that it has gone in that direction. Yeah.
It's really hard to find the cute decorations anymore. You can find a pumpkin and that's about it.
Yep. Things have changed.
Very scary. Okay, next question, Dr. Granpeesheh, thank you for all you do. I'm trying to work with my child myself, doing skills and IBT, but sometimes I feel like it takes longer to learn because it's me and not a stranger. Do you think parents can work effectively with their kids?
Yeah, you are absolutely right. It will take longer with you as a parent. It took longer with me as a parent too, with my own kids. It just is that you have already been conditioned to be mom or dad, and you are the love stimulus, the care stimulus, the comfort stimulus. And so it makes no sense to the child that you now would be the one to also withdraw, let's say, a reward or something like that. So it takes longer. And our kids kind of know us, and they sort of know how to press our buttons and manipulate us really well. And, the minute we feel guilt or fear or something, we back off. So like the other parent who had written in, it just becomes a manipulation and an ongoing kind of dialogue, and that's always bad. It's a lot easier when it's a stranger coming in, definitely, because your child doesn't have a relationship with that person yet. So, and they're just developing, and if you set the relationship from the start in the correct way, then things go easier. Having said that, ultimately you need to establish this relationship anyway, because ABA is not just about a specific set number of hours of the day. You really kind of have to live it, and it's just really good parenting to be able to know how to give rewards, when to remove rewards, when attention can be rewarding, when, all of that sort of stuff just kind of becomes part of you. So my recommendation is, for the core sit down, do therapy time, it's always better to have someone who's, let's say, a therapist or a third party, but still do really become fluent and familiar with all the techniques yourself as well.
And I will say that now with IBT, you can train someone very easily and cost effectively to be able to do therapy with your child in addition to you. And I don't know whether I heard about this or I dreamt about it or whatever, but I swear that I heard about two moms who had gotten trained, were working with their own children, and saw that they wished it would be just a little bit faster with a stranger, and so they would do therapy with each other's children. I wish I could find, if that's true, who they are to have them on the show, because I think it's a great idea.
It is a great idea, and that's right. If they're listening, they should call in.
Yes, absolutely.
But I've heard of parents doing that before, but I mean, we've had kids recover, Shannon, who mom is living in a small town somewhere, and they will literally not even hire, the entire village volunteers and gets trained, and they do shifts with the child.
Yes.
So, anyone with IBT stuff, anyone can be doing this work. It's always good to have someone experienced overseeing the whole thing. But it's usually very much easier when it's someone else than it is you. But there's such great value to working through it yourself as well. Like, you really, when someone else comes into the picture, they will get stimulus control, so they'll be able to get your child to be compliant, let's say. But you won't. Until you work through it, your child will differentiate, and they will know, this guy means business, but I can mess around with mom a little bit.
Right.
So there's a huge value in you actually working through and continuing to be consistent and give the same messages to your child.
I totally agree. Do you need a break, or should we forge on?
I'm fine.
Okay. From a teacher, we have, how can I get a student in my class to stop picking his nose, 3rd grade, and thank you. Succinct.
Let's see. Well, you can do a number of things. I mean, for a teacher, it's very hard because you have to watch over multiple other kids, of course. So you could do a response cost system. So every time that the child their finger actually touches their nose, they lose a token. And the reward system would be on a duration. So let's say what I would do is I would probably target specific times of the day, and I would say these are the times that he tends to do this most. So I don't know, let's say through story time. I don't know the age of the child or the activities.
Third grade.
Third grade. So let's say, during this particular lesson, let's say during math or during literature or spelling or whatever it is, the child tends to do it more. So I would target one time frame at a time, and I would say during this time frame, we're going to put a timer. And you put the timer and you start with, or you could do something quiet so it doesn't bring a lot of attention, like perhaps an egg timer, 3 minutes. That's actually a pretty good time frame, 3 minutes. And if the child doesn't touch their nose at all in 3 minutes, then you reward them. And then it becomes 6 minutes or 5 minutes, 6 minutes, 10 minutes, whatever, and you increase the time frame. And if they do, you will give, so if they don't, then you just go over to the child and give them a smiley face. And if they then accumulate, let's say 10 smiley faces, it's a token economy, then they will be able to trade that in for some free time or some activity or something like that. And if they do, they'll get a sad face, and sad faces will lose something, some activity, or, and token systems are really effective if the child is high functioning enough to get it, but they're hard to put in place. You really need to do it's very important that the tokens have an equal value. The value is weighed according to the reward they get at the end. It's kind of like money. Money is a token. Money on its own has no value at all, but money has value because it buys you things, right? But if you needed to accumulate $10,000 in order to buy a soda, then you wouldn't really work hard because it's not worth it.
It feels unattainable. It's not unattainable, but it feels unattainable.
Exactly. So those are the key things with a token economy, are that it needs to be fair, right? And so I really recommend that you have someone help you set that up. I don't know if we even have any training on how to set up token economies. I bet IBT does, because it's a very key thing, important thing to do. So that would be one thing you could do. Another thing you could do is, for instance, perhaps put some form of cream or something on the child's finger. I actually try to find out why the child is doing this. Like, it could have formed into a habit, but it could also be because the child has allergies. But really, you need to, it's something that requires a little attention, and it's hard for the teacher to do that. But I don't recommend, of course, I'm always very cautious with kids. I don't want them getting embarrassed in front of other kids. So really, a token system is probably your best bet, because it's not as attention grabbing as any other kind of, you don't want to block it because it becomes very obvious the other kids would make fun of the child and so on. But try to find out, because if there's something that's provoking the child, like they have an allergic reaction or they're itchy, their nose is itchy, your token system won't work, because they always have a continuous need to touch their nose.
Okay, going back to why are they doing it to begin with?
Right.
Okay, great. I'm interested in this one because we were working on this morning. How can I work on my child's memory for things like state capitals and multiplication tables? It's so boring. I just can't. I think it's get him to care. We were working on state capitals this morning because there was a quiz on the southern states this morning and a quiz on the digestive system. So we're trying to come up with all these devices for him to be able to remember it. But it is, when it's dry like that, when it's just pure memorization, to make it rewarding enough is like a full-time job.
It is. And, memorization is just repetition, and you can't do anything about it. I remember doing that with my kids, and it was actually one of the fun things we did, because
share.
We used to this is Sonny, right? My son is a comedian, so he would forever, and I wish he would still do that, but forever he used to, dinner time was his time to perform. Like, he would come up with some game at dinner every night for the entire family, and this was one of the games, because he was memorizing this, and we turned it into a game because quite honestly, the rest of us did not know all the capitals, and he did. And so it was a matter of, he was motivated to learn them because he would win this game.
Okay.
And the game was essentially, you'd pull out of so you'd have the name of a state on one side of the paper, and then on the back side, inside, you'd have the capital.
Okay.
And it was all in a hat, and each person would draw one out, and they'd look at the name of the state, and they'd have to say what the capital was, and of course, whoever could would get a point.
Okay.
And so Sonny was the one that always could, because he studied. But I mean, it's just rote memory. You have to do that. It's just repetition. But it was so much fun that a lot of us learned because of that.
So make it fun.
And writing things tends to help our memory. Okay. So you read it, you'll write California, Sacramento, you'll write it out. Writing enhances memory. There's memory techniques, obviously, like studying techniques. So studying techniques are, you will mass study something, let's say 5 days earlier, right? So you'll just study it. Then 4 days later, like 4 days to the test, you'll study a little bit, and then 3 days a little bit less, and 2 days a little bit less. So there's these techniques where you decrease the amount of time you're studying, but you refresh as you get closer, and you mix it with other activities, and that repetition over the course of days is what really works.
Great. I think everybody else, most people do it the reverse of that. That they look at it a little 5 days before, and then they look at it a lot the night before.
Right,
yes.
Right. But if you spend, like, let's say 3 days before, 4 days before, and you just reintroduce it, that's when you kind of learn over time frames. Yeah.
Okay, great. So getting an early jump on it. I love that. I'm going to play that game tonight at the dinner table.
Have fun. Math, now, on the other hand, this is one of the things in English we don't have. Math timetable. In other languages, they have songs, kind of like the ABC. A lot of other languages have songs for the...
Really?
And that it's interesting because I learned, I'm Iranian, so I learned the timetables in Farsi.
Wow.
And to this day, when I do, and Lovas used to do this too, Ivar used to do it in Norwegian. It's interesting that math is one of those things that I think because we learn it early in life, when you do it later in life, you tend to go back to your own language when you calculate. Like, to this day, when I calculate things, I'm calculating them in Farsi.
Really?
Yeah, and Ivar used to tell me that he noticed that he calculates in Norwegian. It's funny.
And so did you teach those songs to your kids, or did you...
No, but my kids don't speak Farsi that well. No, and it's rhymes. Like, 2 times 2 is 4 in English would be dudu ta charta. So it's kind of a rhyme, so you remember it. And so that's, you have to think of tricks.
Yeah.
Like, the 9 tables. One of my kids taught me that.
I don't know the trick.
Oh, you have to know 9s. 9s are the best,
okay.
right? So you hold out your hands, right? And so the 9s are the hardest. Like, all kids get messed up with 9s, right? So each of your fingers is represented as a number, right? So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay? So if you want to say 9 times 1, you put your little finger down. I can't do it. And how many fingers do you have left?
You've got 9.
9. Okay. That's the end. 9 times 2, you put the 2 finger down.
Right.
And what do you have? You have 1 and 8. 18.
8. Oh,
1
clever.
And 8. 18.
Oh,
if you want to
say
9 times 4,
right,
you put the 4 digit down.
Right.
What do you have left? 36.
Oh, I see. I was just counting but it gives you the first digit here, and
you literally so pick a number. 9 times
3.
Okay,
so I put the
that's
third
the 3 digits. So 20. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7.
Wow.
Okay.
Clever.
9 times whatever. Pick another one.
So 9 times 5. I would put this one down. I've got 45. Oh,
that's a good one.
Oh, that's really good.
Yeah.
Somebody needs to patent that. How nice would it be if we had that for each one of them?
Yeah.
Oh, that's clever. All right. Life-changing. Right? It's the little things that are so exciting, right?
Right.
Oh, I can't wait to show that to Jem.
He'll love it.
I can't wait to show it to Jim, my husband. He'll love it.